This is an interview with Stefan Freedman, longtime Subud member. Currently, he's from England, but he's currently in Mexico. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, with the jumping beans.
So, Stefan, can we start by, if you would just tell us how you found and came into Subud?
Mm. There's always a long and a short story. I'll try and give you the not too long one.
Okay.
Um, I was a young person with a lot of questions and a lot of insecurities. So at the age when many teenagers were going to discos and playing sports and things, I had my head in library books, reading philosophy, psychology, and spirituality, trying to find the meaning of life, trying to find some purpose, make some sense of it. Um, and among the various books on spirituality and psychology, there was one called A Spiritual Psychology. I thought, wow, two things that I'm passionate about in one book. So John Bennett's Spiritual Psychology opened a door for me. The book really spoke to me. It spoke to me more than at that time Freud and Jung and other people spoke to me, because it was all about the divided impulses, the way that we're pulled this way and that way by our desires and our thoughts and our warring impulses. It completely described me. I thought somebody actually gets me. And within the book, from time to time, it wasn't a Subud book, but Bennett would make references to Subud. So then I started reading Subud books. I wasn't quite so knocked out by them, to be honest, but I was interested enough to become an applicant. I had to wait 2 years. I was 16. I had to wait 2 years to become an applicant at 18. And that's it. I never looked back.
So what year was this?
I read about Subud in 68 and I got opened in 1970.
And how was your opening?
Well, it was a rare occasion. I didn't know how rare it was because I was open with three other guys. I didn't realize then it was unusual for four people to be opened at once. It was at the then Central London Group. It was then in Notting Hill Gate in West London. And I noticed that everyone around me, including the new people, when I blinked my eyes open secretly, they seemed to be moving or making sounds, or everybody was very involved in it. And all I could say, the only thing that was going on for me, there were two things going on. Firstly, there was a feeling of inferiority because it's like, why? What's wrong with me? I think I'm a dad, blah, blah. But at the same time, there was something happening in my feelings. And when I came away from the hall after that opening, although I hadn't moved an inch, I felt something very strongly inside. And I'd already felt something of that in the applicant meetings, which was one of the reasons why I persisted with them. Um, so I realized I was going to be a slow burner, and I was in it for the long haul.
So have you had much experiences being around Bapak since you were opened?
Yes, mostly in my earlier days. I suppose the most yeah, the most vivid was when I managed to get to Chilandak. I'd just gone through university. I'd been open 3 or 4 years. Um, and like so many people, my dream was to go to Chilandak because people would come back talking about the way you felt differently. You were floating 3 foot above the ground, and maybe you would get a sight of Bapak or his grandchildren or something. And I went during Ramadan as well to try and get the most of that experience. And at one point, there were several of us working in Bapak's garden, digging stuff, digging the flower beds. And he took a walk through the garden. and he kind of came and greeted us and thanked us. And the main thing I remember thinking at the time was, he can see what a terrible I know he can see what a terrible state I'm in. I'm full of thoughts, I'm full of nafsu. Oh my God, he can see through me. um, Instead of thinking, oh how wonderful I'm with Bapak, it was like, no. um, but towards the end of that stay in Chilandak, I'd been doing things with the children, because a lot of the children living there were rather bored, and I'd started a children's club with them. And I had no idea that Bapak knew about it, but he thanked me for the work I'd been doing with the children. And then I was really moved, and thought, oh, he really takes an interest in even, you know, young hippie guys like me and what we're doing. As I was at the time. I'm not saying I'm now a young hippie guy, but I was there when I was in my early 20s, and I looked like a young hippie guy. So he took an interest in people, and he noticed what people were doing, or people told him. So that's one Bapak story.
What year was that?
74.
Okay. Was that just your own personal visit to Indonesia, or was there some kind of function or something going on at that time?
Ramadan in Chilandak was going on. And I'd got through university. I'd spent my money saving, sorry, spent my summer saving money by working in a language school. So I had enough money to get me to Indonesia. I didn't have much when I was there, but I gave music lessons to some of the children, including one of Bapak's granddaughters. And that gave me enough to live on for, I think I was there for 6 weeks.
Were there any other times that you're around Bapak that you could recall?
Yes, I tell you what really made an impression on me. Well, two times. David Reynolds, who became Francois Reynolds, um, was helping to sort of arrange Bapak's visit to Norwich one time. And I noticed that he really treated Bapak as he would like an older brother. He was holding his arm, giving him a bit of physical support, chatting with him. And I was so, I sort of did a double take. It's like, oh, you can sort of be a friend to Bapak. And he was my friend. And I thought of Bapak as like someone who'd landed in a spaceship. And I shouldn't come too near in case I kind of polluted the ground or something like that. That was one impression. It was just like, oh, so he's a human, and also he appreciates support, like even an arm to hold sometimes. I don't remember the year. It was quite a few years later than my uh, Chilandak experience. I want to tell you about another time in Loudwater Farm. It was a little bit surreal. There were an incredible number of people had come because Papa was visiting Loudwater Farm. And it was like when you see the pigeons at Trafalgar Square, but maybe you don't know that. It's a place in England where there's thousands of pigeons. And as soon as you bring out birdseed, they all descend. We kind of all descended on Bapak. He hardly had space to breathe or walk, and everyone wanted to be the nearest person to him. And I rather felt sorry for him. I thought it must be overwhelming. It was a bit like when a rock star appears from a concert and everyone wants their autograph or something. I wish people had given him a bit more space. And then he asked us, I think he wanted us to kind of be a bit distracted. He said, is there a song you could sing? And we were all looking at each other like, do we all know the same song? And somebody started a rather melancholic folk song. I can even remember what it was. It was something like, real old English dirge. And Bapak listened politely, and he said at the end, it's a very sad song. It will make your heart sad to sing songs like this. Maybe sometimes you should sing a happier song or something like that. He was being his usual quite light-hearted self, but also giving a message. So I was kind of impressed with how he dealt with that huge, slightly predatory crowd that surrounded him on that day.
Have you had any other experiences that kind of shaped your life direction?
Yes. Do you mean Latihan related
Yeah,
experiences?
yeah.
I'll tell you the first one. Oh gosh, there's been several actually. I could probably fill several interviews with them. The first one is going to sound a bit strange. Um, in my early 20s, I had a feeling that my Latihan was blocked. It was like I started to let go and I stopped myself, and I started to let go and I stopped myself. Um, and I asked, I think I'll leave out the names just because I will. I asked a local helper if he could test with me. No, I'm going to say his name because it's a nice story. His name is Hanafi Tucker. He was an artist, quite a strongly opinionated person who I actually like very much. And he took me to his home with another rather less experienced helper, and we did some testing around my Lati hand. The usual thing. How is Stefan's Lati? Well, I was Doron in those days. How is Doron's Lati hand? How should it be? Um, and he said, "Look, this is going to sound very weird to you, but when I asked how your Lati hand should be, I got don't eat potatoes." Well, this was long before people were all talking about food sensitivities and gluten free and so on. Um, that was just what? What? uh, I thought, okay, I'll give it a try for a week. Well, I usually ate potatoes every day of my life. So 1 week later, I was a different person, Rahman. I didn't know at the time I was very allergic to potatoes. And the effect they had on me was to make me drowsy and rather depressed. As soon as they were out of my life, I was more awake and the depression lifted. The depression was so normal to me that it was normal. I hardly even knew it was there, like a constant sound. But once it's lifted, oh, I was more present in the world. I was less weighed down, and my Latihan opened up. So I've never received something as vivid as that in my life. I don't know how he did it, um, but it changed my life.
How about your dancing? You're
Mhm.
teaching dancing right now, but how did that get started? And was that a result of something from being in Subud or yeah?
Very connected. Let me give you one story that goes in the middle of those two questions,
Okay.
because at a time in my life when I was a self-employed guitar teacher, earning just about enough to live on, um, I did a little testing on sometimes in Latihan. If something's weighing on me, I ask the question in Latihan. This wasn't testing with helpers. I just asked the question in Latihan. It's like, what do I need to do, or how am I limiting myself, or something like that. And I started going. I've never had a Latihan like that. I said, "What does this mean?" And I got it. It's like you've got to learn to blow your own trumpet. Well, blimey, I've always been someone that doesn't like egoistic people that blow their own trumpet. I don't want to be that kind of person. So I had to think about that. What does that mean? And I discovered that I could talk about myself as if I was talking about a friend. So, Stefan Freedman's a very experienced musician who's very good at enabling people who lack confidence, blah, blah, blah. I can talk about me the way I could talk about you, and with no more or less persuasion or not spinning it, just like this is how it is. That was a turnaround for me. And that very memorable and kind of funny Latihan response was one of those turning points. And I mention it because the ability to be willing to promote myself has been part of what enabled me to make my passion into my work. So my first self-employed area of work was music. And it came round to be dancing because it's a little hard to put into words, but I'd have to say that every time I danced, I felt a Latihan connection. And also I felt that it was very therapeutic for me. Sometimes just in the way that Latihan can dispel fog and clouds and bad mood, dancing did the same thing to me. And I felt that there was a real connection between me dancing and me doing Latihan. Whereas prior to the Latihan, I was a very disembodied person, living really up in my head. The Latihan took me into my body. So it paved the way for me to start dancing for myself and enjoying it. And for 10 years, I was dancing for myself with no idea that that was a possible avenue of work. That was the last thing on my mind because I was shy and clumsy, and I didn't see myself in any way as a dancing sort of person. But it gradually opened up for me. So when I started my first class, it was not going to be my work. It was a hobby, right? And luckily, Subud Central London, that was then in Shepherd's Bush, said, sure, go ahead, use the Latihan room when no one's using it. We won't charge you rent for the first 3 months. Give it a try, see if you can get your class going. I had wonderful support and a few Subud members who were interested, who were the sort of like the seed corn of me teaching. But it very quickly evolved. It is so much me. Within a couple of years, I was in demand all around the UK. Within a couple more years, I was in demand all around the world. How did that happen? I'm sure the Latihan had a lot to do with it, and with my ability to teach in a way that makes people feel comfortable and empowered. I am a trained teacher, so I've got the that bit of background behind me, but the inner part, I think, the presence has been part of that as well.
And so is it going pretty well for you now, the dancing?
I never thought at 73 I'd have so many invitations to teach around the world that I have to choose among them. And that I'd have the energy and enthusiasm to be working. I love it more than ever. And it's developing very rapidly because I'm on a very rapid learning journey about dance for trauma release, which already exists, but it doesn't exist in a fully developed form. So I'm actually you could say I'm one of the pioneers in the use of dance in a modern therapeutic context. And it's so exciting to be involved in that, meeting people who are really enthusiastic and take notes when you open your mouth and start talking. It's a lovely feeling.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky because I get so much out. People say, well, thank you for what you gave. And I say, oh, right, okay. I guess I was giving something, but I'm getting so much out of it.
Any other experiences that have kind of affected your life over the years?
Mm, mm. Very big one, and I'm sure it's Latihan related, but I can't prove it. There was a time when I had 3 teenage stepchildren, and I was really struggling in a number of ways, especially with self-esteem, because I had a very poor relationship with the youngest of the three. And I've always believed in good communication and peace and love and acceptance, but I couldn't do it with my youngest stepdaughter. Things were really difficult between us, and not only that, but the feelings that were arising in me were not the feelings that I like to associate with myself: anger and blame and resentment and you know hardness of heart. It's not what I was choosing, but it was what was visiting me. And on one day, I went for a walk, and I guess I was kind of asking God for help or guidance. And I was going past a tree which I'd come to consider as kind of a friend. It was just a nice little tree that I rather liked. And on this occasion, I couldn't walk past it. I just, like my feet were anchored. And I found myself breathing more deeply and feeling a little less tense and noticing how down I was on myself. And then for some reason, I looked up and this tree was full of little seed pods. Can you picture little seed pods? They weren't particularly attractive. They were open seed pods, so all the seeds had scattered. And I very clearly heard, not like a voice outside me, but a voice inside me saying, you see this tree, the nature of the tree is to create seeds and scatter them. We don't know which ones will land on the earth and which ones will grow into sprouts. But the tree doesn't have to be concerned with that. All it has to do is create seeds and scatter them. And so I understood that I felt released. I felt, okay, so long as I give my best to the world and I give the best seeds that I can for the future of the world, it's not my responsibility to see that every seed grows and or to worry about them. Just give your best. It was like that. And I don't think the tree spoke to me. I think the wisdom spoke to me through that means at that time. And it did change my life. It's something that I've held on to often when things have felt a bit difficult. It comes back to me.
Far out.
Did it make sense?
Yeah,
It's a strange story. Before that, I'd heard of people having conversations with trees, and I thought, not sure about that. So I have to overcome slight embarrassment to tell that story.
Any other things you can think of?
Oh, we could go on forever, but they'll come one at a time. I'll tell you one that's it's very related to my Subud journey. There was a great celebration at Anugraha when we still had Anugraha. Was it there? No, I'm so sorry. I'm getting confused. It wasn't at Anugraha. It was at a nice big hired place somewhere in that same area, somewhere near to Ascot, and it was to celebrate a big Bapak birthday. And I'd gone along, what's the word? Charged by? No, I'd been asked by the people in the Subud Vision Project, which was taking a very evaluating look at our Subud culture and how we could do it better. Some people found it quite critical. I'd been asked to conduct like a member survey and a big open conversation and to see what was members' priorities. What do you like? What's going well for you? What would you like to change? Is there anything you'd like to change? The main thing that came up was communication of a personal kind. It was like not all to be all about organization and projects, but just please can we be people together, something like that. And I came in with quite a lot of critical thoughts about what, in my view, were the people who were for change and progress and the people who were very conservative, holding things in place. And in the middle of one Latihan, I had a moment where it was like, oh, and I could see that it was two sides of the same coin. Or I could feel it, more than see it, I could feel it. I could feel the dedication of the staunch, conservative-minded people. Absolute dedication, holding everything together, being the pillars of Subud. And I could see the vitality, the growth, the sort of positive energy of the people that were really yearning for change, for a more liberal atmosphere. And I could see how potentially those two things could go together so well. And that our problem was that we weren't understanding or appreciating each other. We were in an oppositional relationship. So I came out of that Latihan feeling rather differently. And that perception's never left me. Although I think we still have a perceptual difference. It's only a perceptual divide. Yeah, I think it's two very complementary, strong aspects of Subud that could potentially work in a good dynamic.
How about your personal life? How has Subud affected your, day-to-day existence and family life, things like that?
I think there was a time in my life, in my earlier Subud life, I have to answer that question by giving you a little bit of history. The first year of my life, I was on a kibbutz, which is a collective farm in Galilee, in Israel. And back in those days, there was a lot of work needed to be done by men and women. And to enable people to do all that work, all the infants were put together in one room or one little house and looked after by one or two volunteers. Well, they weren't exactly volunteers because everybody was required to do everything. So some of them probably liked children, some of them didn't like children particularly. And they discovered soon after that, of course, that as we know now, children need a lot of handling, they need some stability. And a lot of children came out of that situation with what we now call early infancy trauma. So if I look at all the challenges of my early life, it's absolutely classic case study of early infancy trauma. So one of the things I said, I used to live in my head. I wasn't in touch with my body or emotions at all. And my early idea of spirituality was to transcend all that. It's like the body's not really important. The emotions are just emotions. They come and they go. And what's important is mind and spirit and friendships. I valued friendships. So I came rather late to marriage. I married when I was 35. Oh, I got to I've just got to plug this thing in. Okay. Yeah, I came to marriage rather late and instantly had three stepchildren. And I had no idea how emotionally undeveloped I was. I thought I was actually a pretty cool spiritual guy. I'd been a school teacher, I'd run children's clubs, I was good with children. I had no idea what was about to hit me, which was the reality of relating to a wife and three stepchildren. And to be honest, I don't think I was very skilled because when anger arose, it was an unfamiliar animal. And it was quite clumsy. It was, I'd either push it down or eventually it would kind of explode. And I had to go on another journey, which was Latihan accompanied, but it was a bit like realizing that the inner journey, for me, the inner journey needs to be accompanied by some outer understanding. And it helped me a lot to learn nonviolent communication, which is not to push down or deny feelings like anger, but to learn how to interpret them and how to integrate them and use them constructively. So instead of riding on top of my feelings and saying they're not important, they started to become a very big part of my life. And that had a great deal to do with my dance journey, which was also a journey of opening up feelings and feeling that this body and me are actually integrally connected. We're good friends. We're not, it's not just something stuck down under my head. So the Latihan, the dancing, and life's school all pointed me in the direction of integration.
Have you been to many world congresses?
No. The first one I went to, I was looking after teenagers and children. It was the one that was in Britain many, many years ago. So I was mostly on a field in a camp. Um, but I really enjoyed being with an international group of children and singing songs and playing games with them. That was my experience, my first Congress experience. The second one was in Spokane many, many years later. I'm so glad I got to that one because it seems to me it was quite exceptional in the sense that all the arts people like me, seeker type people who played concerts and led dances and drumming, um, we were very open to members of public joining in and also to going out. I performed in one or two cafes in town and people say, "Who are you? Where are you from?" And of course, Subud would come up. And we found that by the end of the Congress, there were actually quite a number of applicants in Spokane. And it's how I've always thought I'd like us to be, if it were up to me. Very user friendly, very open with the public, not pushing the latte hand, but just kind of like we feel good together. We do this creative stuff together. If you hang out with us, you might feel the vibe, and some people did. I love the Spokane Congress. Also, two very controversial discussions, which of course I went to. One is called "Is Subud a Cult?" We actually talked about that openly in the Congress, not in the main Congress session, but in an approved of workshop. And the other one was gender issues, which at that time were relatively unexplored. And one or two very courageous members came out. One from Latin America said, "I couldn't say this in my own group because there's too much disapproval, but I'm gay." And he got support and approval from the people that were there. So at that time, that was a very big thing. And I was very hopeful that we were opening up in the way of embracing more inclusiveness and, yeah, but my values, I guess. Since then, I've only been to a few national congresses. I haven't made it to a world congress, partly because my global work is it's way more than full time. It's like having two full-time jobs.
I can't think of anything else to ask you, so I'm just going to open it up to you and you can say whatever you feel or would like to share.
Thank you. I really like that invitation, and I'm not sure what I'm going to say. One of the things that has changed in me over the years, and I believe the Latihan is part of it, but it's very hard when you look over a long period and you think, well, how was that the Latihan or life or God or the school of hard knocks? It's hard to know, but I used to be very eager to accommodate and to please. And I don't look at that as a bad thing. In fact, being able to accommodate and to please is part of my group work. It's a skill that's very useful. But the problem in my case was that I'd left out the other part, which is the authentic part. So somebody said, "How do you, okay, thank you. Now you've listened to me very well. Then how do you feel?" I don't know. I don't know. I'm not used to listening to my feelings. I've no idea how I feel. I'm so busy being nice and pleasing you that I don't know what I'm feeling. So I've been on a long journey, really, both to listen to what's going on in my inner feeling, my heart, and my mind. I value all of those sources of information, and to move towards being authentic. I won't say I'm 100% authentic because if I was, it might seem a little harsh or confrontational. And I don't like hurting people. So I try and go somewhere between being kind and being very honest, just find an appropriate middle ground. My silver journey's been very, very helpful to me. But much more difficult in the last few decades because the potential that I saw in Subud when I joined, being one of the more, you might say, slightly bohemian hippie types who joined with very liberal ideas. When Bapak said Subud is for the world, okay, that means it's open to all kinds of people, not necessarily those who believe in one God, not necessarily those who live the way that I live. And to, I guess my desire has been to co-create an expanded view of Subud as we are and as we could be and who we might include. And I've had some disappointments in that area. And people have taken my vision as criticism. Maybe it has been criticism, but the intention, I don't see any point in undermining anyone or anything. There's nothing to be gained. So if you say that something could be different, the intention is to try and make it better. It's not to undermine anyone or anything or make someone feel criticized. But the response often seems to be that people feel defensive or criticized, or why are you attacking this? Why do you hate? Somebody said to me once, why do you hate Bapak? I absolutely don't. I'm so grateful to the guy. I really don't believe I'd be doing everything that has fulfilled my life right now if it wasn't for Subud, and I wouldn't be in Subud if it wasn't for Bapak. Who am I most grateful to in the whole world? But that doesn't mean that he was a saint. He said himself he made mistakes. So my personal view is a lot to do with evaluating, looking at how we might move forward, what holds us back as a collective. And the usual answer is, well, it starts with you, brother. Look inside first. Well, I do. I don't think it's either or. To look at how our collective behaves doesn't mean we're not looking to ourselves or taking responsibility. But I don't think it's a complete answer to always say, go back to yourself, see the fault in yourself. Because as a collective, we have the potential to choose, to carry on doing what we did, to do it differently. It's always within our choice. So that dynamic interests me very much. I am part of ongoing discussions with anybody willing to discuss that. And that's kind of my Subud life at the moment. It's quite, let's say, on the fringe of controversy. Because, sorry, I must add, I really get the idea that harmony is important. Actually, as someone who loves music and dance and group work, harmony is absolutely, it's one of my favorite words. But harmony comes about through a process. It doesn't come about through avoiding a process. So from my point of view, the idea that harmony means avoiding ever saying anything that might offend anybody falls short of where we could get to in terms of our understanding, evolution, and resolving things. I would like a harmony that results from friendly, positive discourse. And well, maybe you know me, maybe you don't. I could talk indefinitely, but the listeners haven't got indefinite time, and nor have you. So you tell me when you've had enough.
Well, you say anything else that you'd like to pass on?
Yes, I really would. I'm a great fan of Susila Dharma and the Susila Dharma projects. The people I know who are involved, either coordinating the whole thing or involved in individual projects, are very much involved in empowering other people. And this word empowerment, empowering others, to me is a key value for me. And Susila Dharma have backed, supported, and taken interest in the direction that my work is going, which is trauma support through dance, music, and the arts. So there is a collaboration. And Seeker in the UK as well has broadened, especially through Mariana Lassalle. She says, okay, arts doesn't exclude science. It doesn't exclude anything. Arts is the creative approach to life. Let's look at the whole of our life and all of our needs creatively. And Seeker has also taken interest in and backed my work. So there is a Subud, they're not Subud projects technically, but there's a Subud, what's the word, teamwork involved. I think that's probably me. And I'm always happy for people to contact me, to chat with me. I haven't left you let me just leave you an email in case anybody wants to message me. And then if anyone wants to connect with dance websites or anything else, they can just email me. But it's dance wise, just the two words that you know, dance wise, 321 at gmail.com. So
One more
Stefan,
time.
dancewise, DANCEWISE 321 at gmail.com. I'm happy to talk with anyone about anything.
Okay. With that, I'm going to stop the video.
Can I say one thing before we stop, Rahman?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing with these interviews, because for me, this personal getting to know one another, all of our quirks, all of our journeys, what brought us to here, it's very valuable to me. It's a heart connection. I've really enjoyed watching the interviews, and thank you for giving your time to it.
Thank you for saying that. Okay, now
So now it's over and out.
I always have a hard time stopping these videos because it doesn't have a thing that says stop at the bottom.
Oh, we should have a funny little code like Roger, over and out, or something like that.